So welcome. Friedger and I are here to give you just a quick demo of some of the things available on Testnet. So as you all know, we've been working on the Stacks 2 blockchain for a while. We have, Clarity, our new smart contracting language, and as of last week, we launched the first public testnet network running this new blockchain. So this is exciting because this means that we can, interact with this blockchain, from across the world. And so Friedger and I are here. We both have our own nodes running. We have our own contracts deployed. And so we'll be demoing, interacting with these smart contracts and sending some stacks to and from each other. Everything is very much in its early days, but I think it's really exciting because we already have a lot of support for lots of different things, and we're laying the foundation for ourselves and you all to really build some cool stuff. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. One sec, I'm going to clean up my background. That was a good call. I got a private message from that, so it was worth it. Okay. Okay, thumbs up, Friedger, if you can see my screen. Okay, great, thank you. So what we're looking at right now is this website where that I've built, and it's kind of just a basic demo website. I'm actually building it to help me, build the tools that are, the app developers in the Blockstack community will be developing. And so I'm doing a little bit of app development. I'm doing a little bit of sort of the back end functionality as well. And with that, I have a little thing that, is usable today and is connected to the Neon network. So we could potentially share out this link with you, but we'll definitely polish this up a little bit to actually have some sort of demo website that you all can share around and use. In fact, you don't even need to have your own node running to be able to interact with this website, but you can if you want as well. So from here, it's just a few different components, but the first thing I want to highlight is this smart contract section. So again, super simple stuff, but I have this contract deployed to the Neon testnet. I'm calling it, status, and it has a few. It has really one basic functionality. Anyone can post their own status onto this Clarity smart contract. So each Clarity contract has its own state, basically its own sort of like mini database. And so what's happening is when you call this one method, you can give whatever text you want, and then you can, the Clarity contract essentially stores an individual status for each address. So if I send a status from one Stacks address, later on, someone else can go fetch my status given that address. And so that's what we'll be demoing. The first step would be to write my status. So what should I say? Let's say, hello. I spelled that right. And so I clicked submit. Now here's what's happening. It opened up a pop-up, and this is using our new authenticator. You guys have probably seen this. This is integrated with Blockstack Connect. And so it works very similar to how when you authenticate, this little pop-up comes up. You can essentially approve an authentication request, but in this case, it's a transaction. And so this is all work in progress, but this is what the end user sees. And so it's a prompt to be able to confirm a transaction. Now, right now we're calling this debug mode. This is very much strictly for testnet. It's really aimed at developers. When we get closer to mainnet, we'll have something that's much more clean and intuitive for the end user. But right now, we're just kind of like throwing a bunch of data at you so that you as a developer, who's kind of the assumed customer at this point, can sort of see what's going on. So we have this little JSON blob here that kind of tells you what's happening. And so it's saying, we're interacting with this contract. This contract is at this address. The contract's name is status. The function that we're actually calling is called write status. And it has one argument that we're passing. It's just passing the same text that I entered in that text field, hello, and the type is of buffer. So it's kind of getting into the weeds of clarity of the language, but different parameters can be of different types. It could have been like an integer, various different things. But buffer in the clarity world basically means string. You can represent strings as buffers. Buffers can be other things as well, but anytime you want to use a string, you're going to be using the clarity type buffer. And then this is my address. This is the address that's going to be sending this transaction. Up at the top, you can see that I already have some stacks in this wallet. I've gotten that from the faucet here. So I should be good to go. I'm going to copy this address so that I can use it later. Click confirm. Yeah, that transaction was just confirmed. Now we're working on some UX improvements here to, for example, wait until this transaction is confirmed and potentially link you off to an Explorer where you can see the transaction you just made. But all these things are very much work in progress. So we're just kind of, we're showing you where we're at today. And things will very much improve steadily as we go along. So I'm going to actually switch to my terminal here. I'm looking at the logs. So I have a Neon node running, and it's connected to all the other nodes in the Neon network. And I believe that I actually don't know exactly what the timestamp was this on, but I would actually be surprised if it happened that quickly. Typically, right now on the testnet, it takes maybe a minute or two for the transaction to get confirmed, but we will see a log when that gets actually fully confirmed. Maybe this was from somebody else calling write status, but it doesn't matter.
I
can actually.
Hi, here's Friedger. I was calling it just a few minutes ago. So
that's perfect. No, that's perfect. That's what I figured. But we can go ahead and try and fetch my status. So what's happening here is I'm calling a different API endpoint that's calling a read-only function. So read-only functions basically just get some state from the Clarity contract. So I have that already set up. And all I had to do was paste in my address because the function says, it's basically get status and you have to pass someone's address. So I just passed my own. And you're seeing is that actually my transaction that we just saw has not been confirmed yet. And that's why you're seeing a different message. This is a message that I had posted earlier. Hey, Neon. So once my recent transaction's confirmed, which it doesn't look like it has yet, I could hit this button and it'll be updated. But I can go ahead and take Friedger's address because he's shared it with me already. Paste it in here. Let's see what he said. Enjoying the sun. So it's all, it's very simple. It's very basic. This isn't some world-changing app, but I think it's a pretty cool demo of, sort of where we're getting to and what functionalities involved. This is Friedger's status that he had posted on the Neon testnet on his own node, and then it was propagated to my node, and then now I'm using this web app to actually, interact with that contract. So let's see. It looks like my transaction was confirmed. You can kind of see that from this log output here. It's basically saying, this, transaction contract called to this address with the function called write status. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and try mine again. There it is. Cool. So it worked. Right now on the Neon testnet, the confirmation times are a little bit variable because we're still like really working on the efficiency improvements in the peer-to-peer network. But what's awesome is that once we get closer to mainnet and in mainnet, we have this concept of micro blocks, and those happen almost instantly. It's sort of a way of a block producer saying, hey, this isn't part of sort of the final big block yet, but here's a transaction or multiple transactions that will be in it. And so, once we get some of that functionality more fleshed out, this will be pretty much instant, which I think is really cool. Yeah. And then I'm gonna highlight this little debugger, just a little bit different demo, and before I hand it off to Friedger. So another little widget in this demo app that I've been building is this contract debugger. So you can enter in whatever contract you want. And so, by default, it shows the status contract. I'll actually fetch that really quick. And this is basically fetching the interface of that contract. It's kind of showing you all the different methods. And so you can see we have the get status function that's read only. We have the write status function that's a public status, or sorry, public function. And so even though I was using these little cards up here, I could actually have just done the same exact thing. I could have posted my message from here, or I could have posted my address, from here. Let's just to demo that real quick. This is just kind of this debugger, sort of a generalized version of what I walked you through previously. And here's the source code. There's no syntax highlighting yet, so it's a little bit ugly to look at. I apologize, but we have some improvements coming on that front that Thomas is actually working on. It's pretty cool. But you can kind of see this contract. It has the statuses map, where it's mapping basically the author, which is a principal in Clarity language, is just like an address essentially. And then the status, which is of type buffer. Then we have our read-only function, where you pass the author argument, and then it's basically just getting the entry from that map that we saw earlier. And then the write status function is basically just setting a value in that statuses map. But I want to show you one more contract. So I've deployed this other one called counter. We actually have a tutorial for this counter contract on our docs, so you can go see that today. So here's the source code. It's I wish the white spacing was a little bit better, plus there's no syntax highlighting, so bear with me. The way that this contract works is there's this counter variable, and so in Clarity there's a couple different ways of like saving some state, some global state. In this case, we're just using a data var. It's basically just like one variable. I'm calling it counter. It's an integer, and the default value is 0. So that's what this first line means. It has two public methods, increment and decrement. And so anyone can call this function increment and decrement, or decrement. And depending on which one they call, it'll actually change the value of our counter variable. And so you guys could try hammering away at the increment function, see how high it gets, or maybe fight back to the decrement, whatever, And then it has this read-only function to actually get the counter variable. It's kind of just a little helper thing there. So let's use it now. I called the get counter function. So now it's at 2. That's because earlier today I already incremented twice. So that's good that that's working. So let's see. Increment or decrement? Friedger, what do you think? Which one?
I'm decrementing.
Well, if you are, I'm gonna increment, and then we'll look at the logs and kind of see who comes first. So when you're calling a public, nice. So when you call a public function, you have to actually make a transaction. So that's why we have this confirmed transaction pop up here. Similar to before, we see that the contract name's called counter, the function's called increment, and there's no arguments passed to this. It's, you just call the function itself. So let's do that. I got a transaction ID back. If once we have a live Explorer that's stable and up and running, we'll be able to just link off to that, and you'll be able to like kind of see in real time the status of that transaction. I'll pull up my nodes logs again. Okay, so Friedger's decrement already got processed, it looks like. So let's try get counter again. Still at 2. Oh, maybe I called get counter after he had already done his decrement. That's probably what happened. And so we can wait until mine gets confirmed, but I think you kind of get the gist. And so I'd actually like to switch it over to Friedger now. He's been working on his own app that I've been using. It's really cool for sort of quickly sending and receiving stacks. And so I'm going to stop screen sharing. Take it over, Friedger.
Okay, here we are. I hope you can see me and basically see my application. Well, not yet. Looks like, oh, it's good. Okay, yeah. So the idea here is that users have, this is a landing page, and this application is really to quickly test the testnet. You don't need anything. You can just press the sign in or get started button, and you get started, and you pick a username when it pops up. Let's go. And then, all right, you're logged in. And when you log in, you get a app private key. And from this app private key, stacks address is generated. So it's derived. So it's deterministic. Whenever you log in again, you get the same stacks address for this application. You have to claim tokens for this address. And I did this already, but we can try do it again. So I don't have this kind of check whether the transaction from the faucet is confirmed, but you just have to wait and you refresh the balance, and hopefully sometimes your stacks token arrive. And then once you have some tokens, you can just send your tokens to someone else. Let's see what's happening. And here we look up the stacks address that was published with the through the public profile. And then we get a transaction ID if it was successful. Well, we can have a look at my log, but I have enabled debug. So I'm not sure whether we can really see something here. It's really tiny. But we can see whether my balance has changed, and maybe Hank can confirm whether he received some tokens in his address. And that's already it. And if you post your Blockstack ID, if you have logged in onto your onto speed-spend.netlify.app, and you have published your stacks address, then I can pick it up and send you some tokens. If you post it in your YouTube in the chat now, then we can do that. For now, I don't know, maybe Hank can see whether he received some stacks. Oh,
not yet. Still waiting, but shouldn't be too much longer.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the idea. So it's really easy for the user to just share the Blockstack name, and then you can exchange your tokens. And you can also just use the, oops, that's wrong. You can use just the Blockstack name that you get from the authenticator without the id.blockstack. Just for simplicity, it works as well. That's it from my side.
Yeah,
so.
I think that's awesome. So that's just a quick rundown on some of the things you can get started with.
Yeah.
We can definitely share out links. I'm sure we'll work with Jenny to send out links to these sort of things and sort of the relevant docs. It's all very much, kind of in progress. And so things are changing and being improved frequently. So, we'll be in touch on Discord, of course. So this will be fun.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I think, go ahead, Jenny, yeah.
Oh, I think might give it like a minute or two for questions. There is one in the chat that I see from Brad. Brad's asked, what is the time between blocks on average? A few minutes. And I'm assuming there might be a couple more questions, but like you said, if there are more questions later, we can always be in touch on Discord.
In terms of the block time, I don't know. It's not an exact thing yet. The way the Neon network works right now is that there's actually only one node that's doing the mining. We wanted to kind of, we're building out our testnet incrementally. We don't want to just give it all at once. We wanted to launch one thing with limited functionality, find out those bugs, and then sort of move from there. So right now there's only one miner that Blockstack PBC is running. I don't know exactly what the configured block time is, but there's like sort of the time it takes to do the Bitcoin block on our sort of private or like testnet Bitcoin chain. And then there's also a little bit of latency for like the peer-to-peer network to, broadcast the transaction. So in my experience, I've been seeing like typically maybe in like a minute or two, but I can't give an exact number. And it's probably going to change even during the, just during the Neon testnet.
Cool, thanks, Hank. Friedger, is there anything that you'd like to add before we sign off?
Not really, no. I'm, happy enjoying the sun.
All right, cool, thanks, guys. So if there are any other questions, catch us in the Testnet channel on Discord. I just shared the link there in the YouTube chat. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. And a special thanks to Friedger and Hank for that great demo.